Your speaker is shut off. You have to unmute.
Really? Anita, I've never done a Zoom before.
I know that. That's why I'm telling you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You'll always be the educator.
For me, I drive my kids crazy. You have no idea.
You drive your kids crazy? Anita,
I do.
not
Aren't
even
we supposed to?
Where have you been all week?
I've been, I don't know, here, there, and everywhere, but a little R&R. I assume you guys spent a few minutes talking about Yona.
Not yet.
Unless you-
We are going
okay.
to. Yeah,
Okay.
we're going to. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I sent you a private text and it popped up on your screen, so don't worry about it. Life is good. Life is good.
I thought our colleague Rabbi Baskin did a very nice job yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. He
You know,
does good time.
it's like 2 days ago, Yona Victor passed away. Allah Shalom. And I was just thinking about all the empty seats that we would now have at if we were doing this at Temple. You know, it's like it's like a choir that is no longer heard. Just this last couple of weeks, we lost Doris Schwartzberg, and I was just sort of going through the list: Ruth Myers and Laurie Kasp and Peter Guthrie and Liz Hoskins and Doris and now Yona, and I'm sure there's another one or two that have eluded me, but
Yeah.
Yona was a very special lady. She was a scholar.
Yeah.
She graduated from Case Western first in her medical school. She was a heck of a doctor, a heck of an internist, and her patients really loved her, thought the most of her, and she was very caring and very understanding, and then all of a sudden comes rheumatoid arthritis, and she can no longer practice, and she becomes like the
Rabbi, I'm sorry, our speaker isn't working for some reason, and I've got it all the way at 100%.
Can hear you.
So we can't hear you.
Can't
You
hear
can't
me.
hear Rabbi?
Can't hear me.
We can't hear you very little.
Okay. Is that any better? Is that any better?
It's not you, it's everyone. It's our speaker.
Oh, it's your speaker.
Oh, it's your speaker.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, we'll all shout as much as we can. Well,
And I've turned, we've even got an extra speaker in here to make it louder. And it's at 100%, but for some reason, even though I keep pushing the plus to increase the volume, it's not working.
maybe you need a new camera.
I'm going to turn us off for right now, and I'll see if anyone from downstairs can come help us.
Good.
Yeah.
Or just leave it on and see whatever, and see what happens.
5,700 South Cedarwood.
What is it?
Yeah.
Say hi to Red.
Oh,
Hi, Sal.
yes. Hi, sweetie.
How are
Good
you?
morning.
Well, good morning to you. It's good to see you.
I'm a little messed up, but here I am. I can
Yeah,
give you a.
Me too. Having a hard time keeping all of mine in place too.
Are you? Yeah. It gets in your way.
I should
Let me see.
You got to cut those bangs, Ray.
I should have put more makeup on. But anyway, the
All right, see you later.
Take care. The professional makeup person didn't show up this morning.
Rabbi Kaye, where is your background?
Not anymore.
I'll come to my background. I'd rather hear about Yona for a couple minutes.
Yeah, just
Oh, I thought he just finished.
yeah,
Sorry.
just a few more seconds. She was a a consummate volunteer after she gave up her medical practice because of the arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. She became this consummate volunteer, and she volunteered at Jewish Family Service, and she volunteered at, I think she was Rabbi Baskin's assistant at hospital visitations, and she volunteered at Temple. She volunteered all over the place. She wherever she was needed, she was there, and she did just a great job of comforting patients in hospitals and working with some of the people who were in hospice, and she was a question answerer, asker. She always had a question. There was always something that she wanted to know more about. Obviously, after her husband died very young, Leonid was very young when he passed away, and so she was a widow for a long time, and she raised Ellen all by herself and did a heck of a job of it, and then brought Leon's daughter from Germany over as an immigrant, and helped to raise her for quite a while. And she was a silent sufferer. Yona, she had Parkinson's, and she had rheumatoid arthritis, and she had, you could probably pick 40 things that she was also suffering from. I think she had everything but Lyme disease, and I'm not so sure about that. So I once asked her how someone overcomes pain and the ability that pain robs you of being able to do. And she said something like, you don't overcome it. You just keep doing what pain allows you to do, and you enjoy whatever you can do.
Yeah.
Which was
Great person. Yeah.
just an amazing thing for someone to say. She didn't tolerate fools very well. She used to come up to me after some of the sessions at Temple, and she'd say things like, how is it that he grew up Jewish and he didn't know that? How could it possibly be that you could grow up Jewish and not know that? And I would just say, I don't know, Yona. And she would just go, ay. She'd sort of walk away.
It's a good question.
It was just, it was like, it was like, who is Moses? It's one of those, what are you talking about? Who was Moses? Who was Abraham? Come on, what are you talking about? Like, what was Pesach? Are you kidding me? What is Passover? She was just a very lovely and a very caring lady, and I was always amazed that in spite of the fact that she could hardly walk, and she had great pain in her legs at all times, and in her arms and in her elbows, she would still make it to Torah study, and she'd still find a seat in the back of the class, and she'd still have a question, and she'd still participate. And I was always amazed that she continued to do it. Anybody want to say a word about her? Anybody have anything to say that knew her?
I was shocked to hear it. I don't know why I was shocked, but we are when we hear of someone we knew. And yes, it's very painful. Yes.
One of the things I always admired about her, she always spoke her mind.
Yeah.
I knew where she stood on no matter what the issue. And at times she was blunt and unedited.
Yeah.
And if she didn't like something, she let you know it. And if she liked it, she let you know it. So one of those rare qualities. The filter wasn't always filtering. And it was just, it was a blessing. And she, over the years, when she used to bring her mom, it'd take them 10 minutes to get out of the car
I remember.
to come in, and her mom would sit with her at Torah study, and and they'd have a nosh in their bag, and they'd have some food, and sometimes Yona would share it, and sometimes she wouldn't. So,
Yeah, Selma was quite a lady too. Yeah. Yeah, Jude?
Well, I was really sad about Yona, of course, because she was just such a hero in everyone's life because of what she withstood through her life. But it made the fact that Ellen took us all to the hospital with her a couple of weeks ago and gave us the opportunity to speak to her, made it just even more touching that Ellen would do that, know how important it would be to her mom. So I think we all appreciate now, especially having had that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Tough stuff. Well, I would like to have everyone join me with the recitation of Kaddish in her memory. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba v'yalma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei kol beit Yisrael v'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shemei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'yom maya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpor v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha b'riach Eila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nehemata damiran b'yalma v'imru amen. Yehi shalom araba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May her life and her memory be a blessing for all who knew and cared for her and loved her, and all of her friends and her sparse but loving family. May she rest in peace. Anyway, well, welcome everybody. It's good to see everybody this morning. And last week we had the Zoomathon with the whole temple, so everybody had different things to check in with, and a couple of people were trying to check in with old Zoom information, and they had a hard time getting in. And so this week we're back on our regular Zoom schedule and password and all the rest of that stuff. Anyway, last week we kind of finished up with the cities of refuge, with the Arei Miklat. The word Miklat is an interesting word in Israel today, because Miklat is on a whole lot of, it's a sign that's on a whole lot of buildings, because it's also the word not only for the city of refuge, it's also the word for a shelter, a bomb shelter. So Miklat is an underground area that is set aside throughout all of Israel, where an entire community can, and there are many Miklatot or Miklatim all over the city, every place in Israel. And you hear the siren go off, and you just, wherever you are, you just run to the Miklat. Unless, of course, you're in your house, because every house in Israel is built with its own miklat. Apartment buildings have one in their basement. Homes that are separate standing homes have a special room that's built with extra protection, with thicker walls, and you go into that room. So miklat becomes one of those words that you learn when you first get off the plane and you land in Israel. That's a miklat. That's a miklat. That's a miklat. And don't forget about it. If you hear the siren, you'll know it's a siren. Just run to one of those miklatim. It's interesting that Hebrew. And when a word ends with a T, normally the plural is ot. So miklat ends with a T, and you would think that the plural would be miklatot, but it isn't. It's miklatim, because the T on the end of miklat is not a taf, it's a tet. And so therefore it's a male word and not a female word. And so I keep wanting to say miklatot, but it's really miklatim. So last week we finished on verse 10, I think, and with the city of refuge, and the reason for the city of refuge was so that the blood of an innocent will not be shed in the land, because the land is supposed to be holy. And oh, I see what's going on. Okay, so my words are being written down on the bottom of the screen, and I couldn't imagine who's doing the talking. Okay, so anybody who can't hear very well, you can read what I'm saying on the bottom of the screen. So innocent blood must not be shed in the land of Israel, and a person who is worthy of running to the Arei Miklat, to any of the cities of refuge, because they have accidentally killed someone, is not guilty of, is not culpable of being avenged. They should be able to sit in this city for the rest of their lives, so that no one will take vengeance upon them. And I was just thinking about that as we're listening to the trial all week of the Chauvin trial. And, he's found guilty of third-degree manslaughter, second-degree manslaughter, and one other crime.
It's second-degree unintentional murder.
Second-degree unintentional. Okay, so so he 3 different kinds of manslaughter. Is prison today an Ir Miklat? Is the penitentiary our version of the Ir Miklat for somebody who commits manslaughter? We don't look at it that way. We look at it as punishment. But I wonder how the biblical mind would look at if say someone from the biblical period could come forward into the present and take a look and see what had just happened as this trial went on, if they would think, penitentiary, Ir Miklat. Okay, that's fitting. And he gets to stay there for the rest of his life, or the equivalent, probably 30, 40 years, whatever, maybe parole in 25 or something, but essentially the rest of his life. And is that equivalent? Obviously, there's a difference between being in the gray sukkah, so to speak, for forever and ever, where the sun doesn't shine that much, and being out in the open in a city with walls, or as David said, on a kibbutz setting where you can't leave the grounds, but you work the fields all day, and you can communicate with others, and it's a less onerous kind of a way of living. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that our society needs to do something different from incarceration? Do you think that there's a different way of punishing, a different way of making society whole? Anybody? Or are we really into punitive? I mean, is that the only, I'm not talking about Chauvin. I mean, he's a Schmendrick altogether. But just in general, have we gotten beyond the concept of creating a different way of punishing in such a way as to enable the one who committed the crime to feel a sense of shame and guilt, and those in the family of the one against whom the crime was committed also have a sense of completion, a sense of relief that some punishment has been exacted, without this warehousing thing, without, you know, stacking people up. And what it really causes to society. I mean, now you've got one more person in a warehouse who's going to be moved about and manipulated by other people who don't have humanity in mind, because they're operating on everyone here is dangerous and could kill me. Therefore, I'll be darned if I'm going to let them get the upper hand. And so I'll be nasty as heck to them. And does this filter down to the general society? This whole idea of coming upon people and making them suffer, and making, and then the idea of you do bad, you have to suffer. You don't get re-educated. You get constant punishment. I don't know. I'm just breathing out and breathing in whatever anybody has.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Are you saying that is it vengeance? Is prison, if that's what prison is for, that would be a societal situation or area. So I don't know. I don't know if anyone knows.
Yeah, I think it's vengeance. I mean, you know, and maybe in fact vengeance is what we really need, but I'm not sure vengeance is what we really need.
Yeah, I'm not.
I just wonder if there are alternatives, Steve.
You know, in some places, they actually do.
Hang on a minute, Anita. Steve.
I think the Torah is pretty clear that one of the punishments has to be restitution. And unless we require those that have committed crimes to make restitution, I'm not sure we'll ever get back to punishment being an effective deterrent. Because if you have to do it anyway, you might as well do it for yourself.
What do you mean?
Well, this may be a little bit off the subject, but if you look at the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, it says, other than if you've been convicted of a crime. So constitutionally in the United States, you are, in the words of the Constitution, a slave if you have been convicted of a crime. And I know that's way too harsh for all of us to gather, but the concept in the Torah that you have to work and to make restitution for the person you harmed is an incredibly important aspect of punishment. Because if you have to spend 10 years working just to pay off the person that you hurt, you know, it's got to sink in that you would have been much better off spending those 10 years for yourself. And then, so that's one thing. We need to restore the concept of restitution. And I think in the Torah, I'm not sure about this, that was part of the aspect of slavery. If you did something that was bad, you were in effect sold to somebody, and the money was used to make restitution to the people you harmed.
Yeah, actually, the concept of slavery really is the word eved, which doesn't really mean slave. It means servant. So you had to serve in order to pay off what you owed.
And then I've run into some people who are into a certain kind of rehabilitation, community rehabilitation, where they spend a lot of time with the youth who go down this road. And they claim they have a very high success rate, and they need greater funding. And so, early intervention would be good, but mandatory restitution is, I think, missing.
There were a number of programs for rehabilitating youth. One of which was almost like the CCC. It was almost like they would. It was almost like a program where they pick up all of these kids who had committed petty crimes, or actually a little worse than petty crimes, and they take them away from their community, and they take them out into a forest or a field or what have you, for a 5-week or a 6-week or an 8-week, whatever it was, period of time. And the kids learned some kinds of skills which enabled them to build a cabin, say for a fire break cabin, or they would clear a forest area, or they would I don't know, they had all kinds of programs in mind. They'd work around dams, they'd work around lakes, to kind of make this area in the forest a little better than it had been. And they'd learn carpentry skills, and they'd learn plumbing skills, and they'd learn electrical skills. They'd learn a whole bunch of stuff. And then after 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, they'd come back to their community, and they would have this mark on their record that said, "You have been rehabilitated. And now at the age of 18, on your 18th birthday, this will be expunged." Deleted totally. No one will ever know about it. It's just
Well, reform school.
Yeah, the skill is there, but the record is gone, and you start over fresh. But if you commit another crime, that's it. We're done. We're done pampering you. So you better stay out of trouble. And that was and they were like great programs. I don't know if they still do them or not. There was one that I thought, gee, I'd like to go on that one. They picked these kids up in a covered wagon, in like an old Conestoga wagon, pulled by horses or mules, and they took them on a road sort of like the pioneers had to travel when they were going cross country. And they would take them up these old back roads, like you're on your way from Colorado to California, and you go over mountain passes and that sort of thing during the summer. And the kids basically had to learn how to pull together as a team to get the mules over certain, potholes, and to, and how to bivouac at night, and how to make a campfire, and how to put it out, and how to take responsibility for each other. It just sounded like a terrific program. And they came back and they were stronger, and they felt good about themselves because they had succeeded as a team and as individuals. And I thought, you know what a heck of a thing to do. I mean, how much better, instead of punishing, you've actually turn this into an opportunity to make real citizens out of these kids. For the same reason, I think we in this country miss a great opportunity. I think every kid after high school ought to serve a year or two, either in the military or in some sort of a community or even government work program. Because I think 18 is too young to go to college, if you want to know the truth, for a great percentage of the people. I mean, for some people, 13's, they're ready for college at 13, 14. But for a whole lot of people, and especially guys, 18 is just too young. And so what do? They think college is an excuse to just goof off and drink and party. And it would be so much better if they started college at 20. And then they'd really take it seriously and they'd get through in 4 years instead of 6 or 5. And they take their classes seriously and they'd finish on time. And they do their graduate studies and they wouldn't mess with it. They would just do it and keep doing it because time was now wasting and they didn't have time to fool around. They had to get a move on. So, I mean, I think Israel has the right idea. Kids all go into the military and, and for most of the kids, the military is one of the truly great experiences of their lives in Israel. I mean,
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to know that in American law, it is recognized that that our job is not just punishment. The whole concept of the whole concept of criminal law and then a civil law, where if there's a wrong, a battery or an injury or a theft or something, there is all that you can go criminally or you can go civilly. Also in criminal law, we have the whole concept, and we'll see it here on the murder charge. The maximum penalty is 40 years, but he's not going to get 40 years. The judge has the authority to listen to various extenuating circumstances, and it's going to be less than 40 years. And not only that, we have the concept of early completion of the sentence, where the whole concept of time off for good behavior. The whole idea that and in criminal law, there are cases where certain crimes are expunged from the record because of later events. I think that all of humanity has recognized the Jewish concept that it's not just a matter of maximum punishment. There are all levels and degrees, and in point of fact, that's one of the functions of an attorney. An attorney not only works to relieve a person of conviction, but also has an obligation to seek the minimum amount of punishment with the greatest amount of rehabilitation. our whole system of parole, where we recognize that a convicted a criminal is going back into society, and we have to train this individual, and this individual we hope that this individual will not repeat criminal offenses and will be a part of society.
Right.
We here, I think, have grown with the concept of the Jewish concept that when there is a wrong, it is not necessarily an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but there are levels and degrees and gradations of what is to be expected of an individual that has done a wrong.
Right. Thanks, Mel.
Can I make one comment?
Sure, Joe.
I agree with what you said about youths 100%, because few youths act alone. There are other influences, gangs, poverty, whatever. And if you get those people early and get them into a productive group, that's very effective. But when we're talking about adults and criminal offenses, I want to go back to what Steve said. I also agree with him. We don't do restitution very well, and we incarcerate people for long periods of time where they only learn prison behavior, and they do not earn enough from whatever labors that they are engaged in that makes any sense. What, 10 cents an hour, whatever. It's literally slave wages. I think if we did pay them for what they do and did pay them for whatever training, and then had a restitution, not after 10 years of doing nothing or 20 years of being in prison where that's the only behavior you know, but to have a series of finding a job. Our parole system, I think, is terribly broken because we've got very few parole officers. People are just in a holding pattern. They can't get jobs. If we were to give those people some kind of work and have a garnishment of restitution, I think that would go a long way. But you have people who are in prison until they're practically ready to die. They have no skills, no will, no family left. It's purely punishment. Whatever you say, yes, they can get degrees when they're in prison, but it's really punishment. It's not restitution, and it's not rehabilitation. Civil law is different because that's not a prison thing. That is a compensation thing for the most part, from what I understand. But criminal law, we have a lot of people in prison who were never dangerous.
Yeah,
and even if they had a targeted killing, they're not going to kill somebody else. Whatever you say about Chauvin, he's off the police force. He's not going to kill somebody randomly. We can put him in prison. It's symbolic, but it doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah, and it would be good if he could be sort of out of society for a while, but he could also have some way of making a living and paying the family restitution, or becoming productive to the society in general. And you know, instead of wasting a life, making that life involved in some sort of a manner of restitution. Exactly, of paying back for what he did.
And few robberies are people compensated for what anybody took. We punish people, but the person who's wronged never gets compensation, never is made, whole is a myth, but an attempt to make someone whole from things that have been taken.
Yeah.
We don't do that at all. And I think that's just, to me, it's a symbol that the system is bent on punishment, not on creating a civil society, on righting wrongs and helping people become functioning societal members. They have no means of doing that.
Well, and the reason I brought this whole thing up is because I think what we have done in this country is, and we didn't really see it coming, you know, not everybody saw this coming. Obviously, Black people saw it coming a long time ago, but we have essentially created an uncivil society.
Voila.
And an uncivil society is not exactly one that is long for this world. You can't have a society in which people don't respect each other, and because when you don't respect each other, then you start to not respect law. Then you start not to respect those who administer law, and you know, we've already started to see that we don't respect the office of the presidency like we did once before, when it was practically a sacred duty. And the court system is starting to fray at the edges a little bit now, as people start to see how some of these judges are put in office, and some of the things that go on in the courthouse. And we're starting to see how police are starting to lose their sense of respect among those who always gave the police respect. You know, I can't imagine the last time I was concerned about, you know, talking to a policeman. But now I can understand fully well that if you're a Black male in America, the last person you want to talk to is a white cop.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I never understood that. But boy, you take a look at the news of just this past month and a half. Are you kidding me? How many Black men were shot by cops this month? I mean, it must be a dozen.
Or traffic stops, or for meaningless things.
Or the Black guy yesterday who called the police, 911, called the police because something had happened in the neighborhood. They came and shot him. I mean, what are we doing here? What are we teaching policemen to take their gun out every time they walk into a Black neighborhood and shoot the first thing that moves? What is this? It's like an arcade. Good God. And you know,
they call that term driving while Black.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole thing is bothersome and worrisome, quite frankly, very worrisome.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
You know, there's the tragedy of a mother, a Black mother, having to tell her children, when the policeman stops you, you do this and you do that. Imagine just telling your children to be afraid when this happens. So
I mean,
awful.
When a policeman stops you, the first thing you do is you do this, and just keep showing him your hands. And what about the guy that was pulled over and he kept going in his car, and two cops just emptied their guns on the car and killed him? For what? I mean, for what? So they had a warrant for his arrest, and he was in a car, and he just decided he'll drive away. You kill him? Is that the first response, or do you just say, okay, we'll find him again, we'll get him? I mean, that's really the response. Okay, we'll get him again. Right. Shoot him? Why are you shooting him? Anyway,
Rabbi, they're starting to investigate the Minneapolis Police Department, and maybe they'll start investigating every other police department too, and police reform.
There's no doubt. Yeah, Mark?
You know, this has been going on a long time. The only thing that's different now is that we have smartphones that can report on the second of what's happening. But if it's happening now to this extent, it must have been happening to a greater extent before, when there was less reportage on it. And I asked several of my patients, I had a Black roommate when I was in college, and we maintained a friendship. And I asked him, I never even thought about it, But until these things started to happen, I asked him what his parents told him about how to deal with the police. And he said it was just uniform, that they just taught you, put your hands on the dashboard so that they can see that there's nothing in them, and don't say anything bad and just answer their questions. And what would the whole society be like if that's what your parents told you about dealing with police?
Rabbi?
Yeah, see?
I think we need to be a little bit careful about painting with too broad of a brush, because I know many cops and they're very good people. And also, I've got to tell you, I was told the same thing when I was a kid, that you need to respect the police. You say, yes, sir, no, sir. I was taught the same thing. Are there problems? Yes. Are we getting better? Yes, much better. But there's lots of good cops out there.
Too late for some.
There's no doubt about that. I mean, that's almost goes without saying. But,
and you know something, maybe we should have Bob talk to us a little bit about this.
Yeah,
Bob Stein.
Yeah, I could ask him.
And get some perspective from the inside. But we got to be careful.
No, but I think Bob is also troubled by what goes on. You know,
Steve, thank you. Steve, thank you, because I see both sides of it and spend way too much time in the law enforcement community. And yeah, there are bad cops, and there are bad priests and bad rabbis, and people don't die by priests or rabbis, but lives are changed forever. And you've got to look at, you know, there was a story of the Broncos came out against the Denver Police Department a couple of years ago because of a couple incidents, and they brought them to the scenario house, and they brought them to 5 or 6 trainings, and it changed people's views in a split second. And every one of my law enforcement friends says they would rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And so there's a lot to this. It's very complicated. There is racism, there is bigotry, there is implicit bias built into the system. I don't deny all that, but there are a lot of many good men and women serving in law enforcement who are getting tainted. And when you look at the amount of people who are the good cops who are now resigning and leaving, you can't fill all the positions because they're afraid what's going to happen to them with immunity stuff. And you're left with people who shouldn't be cops, or maybe shouldn't be cops. It's a whole different story. But I don't want to ruin my Shabbat on this because my blood pressure is. As I said, I spend way too many, because you look at the Boulder officer who didn't have to go into the supermarket and save the lives, and that changed him forever. And we on the corner of Monaco and him, and Bruce Vanderjack, who stopped a burglar who was killed on that corner. So I could go on and on. So it's a touchy subject for me.
Well,
so I agree with misjustice. There are people who should be convicted and punished in appropriate ways, but there's too much. Everybody loves a firefighter, but not everybody loves a cop, as they say.
Rabbi?
Yeah, Gene.
I was just talking last night about this very issue with some friends at dinner after services last night. And I remembered, and I brought up the fact that there was a very beloved police officer that all of us, or almost all of us, remember, who took care of us during high holidays, that you labeled an honorary Jew, and I think is Les Milanakis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think some of us have a very loving memory of that particular officer.
Yeah, but Gene, I'll give you an example. As if because I rode with Lester because he was out of DIA. He was a no-nonsense guy, and he would say every time, "I'm going home tonight. If it's me or the bad guy, I'm going home." And how many times he pulled people over on Pena Boulevard, and so So
he pulled my daughter over on Pena Boulevard.
Whoa.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Torah.
This Jerry Lasso. I don't know if you had a pilot that took down a plane because he was totally incompetent or was distracted, and you would say, yeah, but look at Sully. Look at what he did. You know, we know there are lots of good cops, but there are a lot of people who go into police work with other motives in mind. And I think that's what we're seeing.
I know the end of this is life, and life is precious, but I think about school teachers or gym teachers who abuse kids. I think about psychologists and priests who physically abuse people whose family systems and the next generation is ruined. I think about drunk drivers. I can go on and on. People in positions of authority, judges who miscarriage of justice. It's just, as Steve Tick said, it's just too broad of a brush. Yes, there is a need for police reform. Denver has one of the most cutting edge programs now. If it's a nonviolent call, they have mental health counselors that first respond, and they always have officers available for backup. There are great results in Denver. Denver's doing some really cutting edge stuff of using that. They don't even appear in a traditional uniform. It's a very different first blink. So as Rabbi Z said, they're not coming out with their guns. They're coming out of a van, and they're wearing a yellow shirt and the support services. So it irks me because, yes, it's an end of life, but we have some really bad people in other professions. And let's not forget about our athletes who can beat the crap out of their spouse and still earn $16 gazillion.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
You
absolutely.
need to get my blood pressure. Rabbi, you know why I took off weekend? I needed to get my blood pressure down. Do you do that again?
Well, I have a couple of questions for rabbis, and maybe leading back into Torah, I'm not sure. But I worked with at-risk youth for a long time. And one of the things I learned is that some of the kids had substantial mental health issues, and there's nothing like a sociopath in the middle of a classroom to catch your attention and wonder about the safety of everyone. And that's a real different situation than a kid that's phenomenally arrogant and needs some lessons around arrogance versus kids who just, I think Rabbi's phrase that I really like was learn social responsibility. They just don't have the kind of whatever's going on at home isn't teaching some basic skill sets. And so it's fairly nuanced to me. I mean, I think there are times when some people, a prison or some kind of lockdown setting is the only answer. And for other people, I'm not sure that that's the best answer. But I don't know if Torah in any places kind of nuances out some of that versus sort of like, I know the conversations about, if the wheel comes off your cart and it damages somebody's property, you're responsible. But in terms of some of those social behaviors, does Torah kind of tease out some of that, or is it?
Yeah, actually, one of the things that I was going to do today was talk about who can witness, because we were going to get into witnessing, and the Torah and the Talmud are very specific on the kinds of people who may be called to bear not to testify, because anyone can testify, but witnessing was something else. Witnessing, you had to swear an oath, but testifying, you could make a statement. But that testimony that you gave is not considered for purposes of adjudication. It's really for purposes of seconding the words of the witnesses. It's almost like saying, yeah, I saw him there witnessing, or it was, I was there and I didn't see him there witnessing. That kind of testimony. So who can testify, who can witness? Totally different things I was going to talk about today, but I don't know if we'll get to it, but we'll get to it next week. It's a good thing about doing this for every week. You don't have to worry about getting everything done one week. That was a very interesting statement, Susan. What do you do with a kid who's loony, to use a medical expression?
Well, I mean, some of my experiences is we literally would have kids in a facility to be observed for a while. And then my goal was always to get them the mental health services that they needed. But, you know, it's interesting when you talk about witnessing, though, because the counselors that worked in the school I was in said that I had sort of an ability to kind of see these kids long before they caused some serious damage in the building or to others. And I do think that, you know, in terms of witnessing, it's like all of us having kind of, and I hate to swear on Shabbos, but good crap detectors, and kind of being able to ferret out when things just don't seem right and being willing to call it and get people the help they need before things go so south. Like maybe police officers feeling that it is safe to call out a colleague who's in the weeds, you know, as a matter of practice or just that day.
Yeah.
The, this discussion just reminds me, as I get older, I find that there are fewer and fewer absolutes in life. As a matter of fact, it's kind of ironic because and when we start out in life, we want to know what the answer is. We want to know the right way. We want to know what's good and what is bad. And as we go through life, we're confronted with the fact that even though absolutes give us solid ground and give us certainty in life, and at times make life more easier as far as decisions are concerned. The fact of the matter is that we find out that even with religion, there are fewer and fewer absolutes, and the whole job of life is to develop perspective and understanding in shades of degrees, it's when you come to that point in life, it's very unsettling because certainty gives you peace of mind. You don't like to be in a position where you have to say, well, it depends. It depends on this. It depends on that. You'd rather be much more certain as to where you're going and what you have to do and the rest of it. But that's not life. It is not life.
Yeah. I think Plato probably said it the best, that the only absolute that exists is the absolute that you imagine before the reality becomes real. It's like the parents or like the couple who imagines how wonderful their child will be until the first moment after that child is born and they realize that they can't control this thing. They may have created it, but by the time this kid is 1 year old and he or she starts to walk and he or she learns the word no, it's over. You can do your darndest, but that kid's going to be a separate individual, and all of your idealism has gone out the window with the realism that this eating machine and that this messy machine and that this thing that has its own individuality is going to create its own separate world apart from you. And so everything becomes relative. Life is no longer full of absolutes. There are none. Everything is relative.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's see if we can possibly do one verse. Otherwise, I would feel like we have missed the mark today. So there shouldn't be innocent blood. Now, this is really interesting. Ish sonei l're'ehu. And if there happened to be a certain somebody who hates his neighbor or hates another person, v'aravlo, and he lies in wait for him. The word arav is really an interesting word. Interesting in the sense that it means to ambush or to lurk or, to lie in wait. It's also the root of so many other words, like it's the root of the word event. It's the root of the word chimney. It's the root of the word. It is just a weird word. But anyway, here as a verb, it means to lie in wait. So if a certain person hates someone else and lies in wait for him, v'kam alav, and then rises up against him, v'hikahu, and he strikes him, v'hikahu nefesh, and he strikes his soul. That is, he really hurts him badly. V'met, and that person dies. V'nes el achat ha'arim ha'ele. And then after he has killed this person, he goes and he runs to a city of refuge.
Oh.
Right? Hey, okay, gee, I did this accidentally. And I'm going to a city of refuge. That guy died, and I'm going to a city of refuge. So verse 12 comes along. What's to stop this guy from going to a city of refuge? But verse 12 comes along and says, V'shalcho ziknei ha'iro, and the elders of his city shall send v'lakcho oto misham. That is, they shall send whoever they send. They'll send officials, or they'll send people, or they'll send arresting authorities, or they'll send somebody, and they will take him from that city of refuge. V'nat no, or not nu oto, and they shall place him biyad goel hadam v'met, and they'll turn him over to the avenger, and he'll die.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. No trial, no messing around, no nothing. Just we turn him right over. We turn the Hatfield right over to the McCoys, and boom, he's dead.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
However, the fact situation presented is that he's guilty.
Oh, yeah.
So there's something missing here. But there is a fact situation that says unequivocally that he is guilty of it, and all he did was flee in an effort to claim innocence.
Right.
So what's missing is how guilt was determined.
Well, that was the given. The given is he lay in wait, and he rose up and he killed this guy who he hated.
Right.
So it was first degree murder.
Right.
I mean, that's the given, first degree murder.
Rabbi, does that mean it was premeditated?
Premeditated. Yeah, lies in wait. Absolutely.
Lies in wait is premeditation.
Premeditation, yeah.
I think the issue here is, though, the elders of the town shall have been brought back. So therefore, we're counting on the elders, so to speak, having a trial in absentia. And then
bringing him back because he's found guilty.
Yes, and I also want to comment on that because during the week I read a bunch of things that assigned roles to the elders of the town.
Yeah.
Like the issue of whether some young girl is a virgin or not.
Yeah.
Whether a boy is a wayward son. So apparently the Torah accords judicial functions in the settlements to folks that are called elders, whatever that means.
Yeah, and the who the elders are is really never spelled out. We never know who the elders are. Sometimes the elders are the heads of the tribes in Torah, but when you get into Talmud, you have no idea who the elders are, whether they are chosen, whether they're elected, whether they are old people. Even with regard to the Sanhedrin, there were specific age limits to how young you could be or how old you could be. And yet there were exceptions because there were geniuses who knew the law better than the elders of the town, and they were also given a back seat and an opportunity to work their way up to the front. So who are these elders and what is the deal? Supposedly, according to Talmud, the elders were to bring him back and then through a process of questions and answers, determine whether this was in fact premeditated murder or whether there was some reason for this event, for this act. In other words, why did he hate him? What had happened? What stimulated this hatred? What had the victim done to the murderer or to the murderer's family or relatives that made him that made this person lie in wait? Was this an avengeful act for something that was done in an untoward manner toward the one who did the killing? And then the elders had the opportunity of determining whether this person deserved the death penalty or whether this person could be returned to the city of refuge. So Talmud says that the person was judged based on what the facts of the case were, and then was either put to death according to the law of the Torah or sent back to the city of refuge.
So the only thing missing is the right to confront the witnesses against you.
Right.
And but even assuming that the elders had two witnesses that testified, which is what would be required for death.
Yeah.
There's still what's missing is the opportunity to confront the witnesses against you.
And in most instances, it was the judges who confronted the witnesses. But in Talmudic law, there's a katagor and a sanagor. There's a prosecuting attorney and a defense attorney. And in Torah law, they don't really mention a specific category and sanagor. There's an inference that someone can speak on behalf of another, or that the person themselves can speak on their own behalf. So, who knows how trials were run, but essentially the judge was responsible for making sure that the witnesses were true witnesses. And the judges in a court of 3 or in a court of 7 or in a court of 23, the judges were responsible for looking into the background of the witnesses, for trying to figure out whether they were righteous witnesses, whether there was any suspicion in these witnesses, whether they had testified incorrectly before or correctly before. So there was all kinds of stuff that went on according to, biblical law. Okay, so the elders have a chance to come and take this guy out. The next line is it almost begs the question: Are we going to have a court trial, or is this just, how dare you go to this town? We're coming to get you. Because it says, Lo tachus eincha. In other words, don't let your eye weep over this guy. Do not show him any mercy or any pity. Alav. Oh, va'art. It should be va'arta. Is it va'arta? Yeah, it's va'arta. Boy, I can't see that thing. Let's see. Elav u va'arta dam hanaki. Dam hanaki. So naki means clean. So dam naki must mean clean blood or guilt-free blood. Don't show any pity on him, and uva arta. I will burn. This is really. It says purge. I guess that's as good as you're going to get. Because otherwise it really says, and I will burn clean blood from Israel. It really means the opposite. Uva arta, and I will purge any. It seems to be saying the wrong thing. Be'arta dam hanaki mi Yisrael v'tov lecha, and it will be good for you. Don't show him any mercy, and thus I will. Hard to translate it in the way it was meant to be, and thus we will not have any innocent blood shed in Israel, and it will be good with you. I think the sense of the sentence is, don't show him any mercy. In other words, bring him back, period, end of report. And make sure Rabbi, that innocent blood is either avenged or is does not.
Rabbi,
not harm. Yeah.
I have been troubled over this verse all week. I have asked even a non-Jewish chaplain what he thought. But it finally occurred to me what he's saying here is, don't show him any pity. That's understandable. But the rest of it, you will purge Israel of the blood of the innocent, and it will go well with you. I think they're saying here, it's up to you to clean up the mess, and then everything will be fine for you.
Yeah, that's probably as good as it's going to get. That's probably the deal. It's up to you to get rid of the mess, right? Because otherwise, if you read it literally, it makes no sense. Because
well, it makes no sense the way it was written. It was translated either.
Yeah.
No. Until I figured it. Well, I think I figured it out.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to me that way.
Yeah, because Ba'arta, Boer is to burn, and Dam Naki, what are you burning? You're burning innocent blood? That's not what it meant. It meant clean up the mess so that innocent blood can flow freely in the streets of Israel, and it will be good for you. The innocent will be, the innocent innocence will be shown to. I have no way of knowing how to say this.
Well, just don't say it in Hebrew. Think of how you would say it in Hebrew, not the way
I can't even say it. I can't even say it in English. I don't know. I think what it's trying to say is innocent blood should not be spilled in vain in order for everything to go well with you. So here's this guy who killed someone, quote, innocent blood, and he tried to get away with it. Go back, show him no pity, bring him here, no matter what he says, no matter what he does, and then we'll take care of it from there. We'll look into the matter. We'll find out if he's innocent or guilty. If he's guilty, he dies. If he's innocent, he goes back to the city of refuge, and all will go well with you. And I really,
or maybe they already made that determination, and he ran away and ran to the city after trial, and they were bringing him back to carry out sentence, and they were going to show no mercy.
that is also possible because we're missing about 4 verses that would have cleared this whole thing up, right?
Well, Rabbi, what about that you're vindicating the innocent, the victim? You're vindicating.
Well, they're not really vindicating the innocent. They just want to make sure that they want to know who's innocent here. In other words, the don't show him any pity is to bring him back.
Right.
Get him back here. And then it's assumed if he's innocent, send him back to the city of refuge. If he's guilty, then he's dead. Then,
okay.
Then now turn him over to the blood avenger. Well, that's an interesting way of putting it. I would have said, give him the punishment that he's entitled to, which would be either strangulation or burning.
Oh, something else? It says it will go well with you. That's not the murderer. You are the elders and the people of the town.
Yeah, you as the city is the people of Israel. Yeah.
Right. I don't think I read that right.
Yeah.
So it's basically saying the city's going to take care of it. They're going to clean up the mess, and then everything's going to go great with the city people because we're not showing that guy any pity.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because the object is you shouldn't have murderers in your midst, and you shouldn't shed innocent blood, period. And innocent blood shouldn't be shed because that just leads to a sense of distrust and incivility. And then you have a city in which people are on edge. They don't trust one another. They become uncivil to one another. They don't respect the law. They don't respect this, that, or the other thing. They yell at the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. Things don't go as well as they used to.
So, Rabbi, if you go to Numbers 35, 33, and it says, you shall not pollute the land in which you live, for blood pollutes the land, and the land can have no expiation of blood that is shed on it. When they talk about burning the blood, is there something related to somehow burning the blood of the innocent, or is it really referring to cleaning it? Is it a metaphor for cleaning the earth of the spilled blood?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a metaphor for cleaning up the mess. Blood is a way of saying person, just as just as nefesh is a way of saying person. It really doesn't mean soul. It really means a person. And so blood really means a person. Because when you take a life and no one is held accountable for it, things in the community get messy. Didn't we just have that this week? Isn't that what this trial was all about? When you take a life and you don't figure out what happened, and you don't somehow solve the issue, and you let blood just sort of lay there, the community suffers.
But Rabbi, even in this and then also in the trial, who are you helping to remove their suffering? It's the family. It's the rest of the community.
It's the community, right?
For George Lloyd, it was his daughter, it was his mother, it was everyone. And so once the trial is over and he's found guilty of all these things, I don't think he needs any punishment. That's his punishment, that his daughter is going to grow up without him, that his mother's tears will never stop, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I think that's more important than whether he spends the rest of his life in prison.
Well,
but if you were George Floyd's family, would you say that's enough? Or he doesn't get to see his family and they don't get to see him?
Yeah.
In any instant where blood is shed, that's really a problem. And so there has to be some accounting, just as Torah is saying. You have to account for what happened. If there's a reason for why he did this, and the reason is relevant and almost understandable or justifiable, then send him back to the city of refuge. But if he just did this out of spite and out of hatred and out of bigotry, but and out of stupidity and out of listening to false propaganda and being brought up wrong by your family, then maybe you deserve what you got. In any event, this has been a little bit of a trying day, but an interesting one. Something to think about.
Rabbi, trying day.
Yeah. Let us hope that this next week will be a week with no more friends dying and no more killings in the communities, and a little peace here and there for everybody, and everybody feeling better about having shots, and maybe a time to kind of start saying hello to friends again, and and good times. Anyway, Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat
Shalom.
Be well.
Shalom, everybody. Bye.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.